My name is Katie. I'm 71 years old now, and I live in a small wooden house near the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. The evenings here are quiet, too quiet sometimes. The wind whispers through the old maple trees, and the sound reminds me of the laughter that once filled my life. 50 years ago, I was a young girl full of dreams. Just like any other college student, I used to believe that life was kind, that love was eternal, and that if you loved someone deeply enough, the universe would protect that love forever. How foolishly beautiful that belief was. I still remember the first time I saw Sam, my classmate, my best friend, and later, the man I thought I'd spend eternity with. He wasn't the loud, confident kind of guy most girls fell for. He was quiet, thoughtful, and had this habit of pushing his glasses up his nose whenever he got nervous. Somehow, that small gesture made me fall for him even more. We spent countless evenings studying together in the university library, pretending to read but secretly stealing glances at each other. It wasn't long before friendship turned into something deeper, something pure. When Sam finally confessed his feelings, under the oak tree near campus, his voice trembled. I could barely hear his words over the rustling leaves, but I saw the truth in his eyes. We got married 2 years later. I still remember my white gown, the fresh roses, and the sound of my father's laughter as he walked me down the aisle. Life seemed perfect. Sam had found a good job at an architecture firm, and I had started teaching at a local school. Every morning, we'd have coffee together before work, and every evening, we'd take long walks by the river, talking about our dreams. On our first wedding anniversary, Sam planned something special. A surprise trip to a place we both loved, Lake Serenity. He said he wanted to relive the spot where he had first proposed to me. I remember his excitement that morning. He kissed my forehead, packed our things, and played my favorite old love songs as we drove. But life, it seems, never warns you when it's about to shatter. We were laughing, singing, and talking about our future when, in an instant, everything went dark. There was the screech of tires, the blinding headlights of a truck coming from the wrong direction, and then silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on a hospital bed. My head ached, my vision blurred, and my heart raced. I turned my face to the side, but Sam wasn't there. He never came back that day. It's been 50 years. And yet, even now, some nights I wake up expecting to hear his voice calling my name. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. I remember lying there in that hospital bed, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the quiet hum of machines, wishing I hadn't been the lucky one. My body was covered in bruises, my arm in a cast, but the real pain wasn't physical. It was the silence beside me, where Sam should have been. They told me he didn't make it. The words felt unreal, like something from a cruel dream. I didn't cry at first. I just stared at the white ceiling, waiting for someone to tell me it was a mistake, that Sam would walk through the door any minute, smiling like he always did. But no one came. The funeral was held a week later. It rained that day. Soft, steady rain, as if the heavens were mourning with me. I remember standing beside his grave, holding an umbrella that trembled in my hand. People offered me kind words, sympathy, hugs, but none of it reached me. My world had ended. After that, everything blurred. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. I went back to work for a while, but the classroom felt empty without Sam waiting for me at home. Every corner of our small apartment echoed with his absence. His coffee mug on the counter, his jacket still hanging by the door, the half-read book on the nightstand. I couldn't bring myself to touch any of it. Sometimes, at night, I'd hear the creak of the wooden floor and imagine his footsteps. I'd close my eyes and whisper, "Sam," but it was always just the wind. Still, a part of me refused to believe he was gone. It was irrational. I knew the police report, the wrecked car, the funeral, everything pointed to one truth, but my heart wouldn't accept it. Years passed, but that strange hope inside me never faded. I moved to a smaller house, closer to the lake we loved. Every year, on our anniversary, I'd visit the place where we were supposed to go that day. I'd sit by the water, close my eyes, and imagine Sam sitting beside me, his hand wrapped around mine. People said I should move on, that I was young, that I deserved another chance at happiness. But how do you replace a soul that was tied to yours? I couldn't. I didn't even try. My heart belonged to Sam, whether he was alive or not. Sometimes I dreamed of him, walking toward me, smiling, his eyes full of warmth. In those dreams, he would say, "Katie, I never left. I'm right here." And I'd wake up with tears on my cheeks, unsure if the dream was a gift or a punishment. Even now, after so many years, I can still feel him, in the breeze, in the rain, in the quiet moments before dawn. Some loves don't die, they simply wait. Time has a strange way of moving, sometimes too fast, sometimes painfully slow. For me, it stood still the day Sam left. Years went by, yet my heart stayed trapped in that one moment. The accident, the rain, the emptiness. After a while, my friends stopped calling. They said I needed to stop living in the past, to open my heart again. But how could I? My life had already been written. Every page had Sam's name on it. I didn't want a new story. I wanted the one I lost. I began spending more time alone. My evenings were quiet. Just me, a cup of tea, and the fading light through the window. I'd sometimes play the old songs Sam used to sing in the car. One of them, Can't Help Falling in Love, always made me smile through tears. That song was ours. I still wore my wedding ring. Some people thought it was strange, but to me, it wasn't just a ring. It was a promise, one I could never break. I remember once, years later, a kind man named Peter tried to ask me out for dinner. He was gentle, respectful, and I could tell he meant well. But when he spoke, I felt nothing. My heart stayed silent. That's when I knew I could never love again. Sometimes, when I visited Lake Serenity, I'd talk to Sam as if he were there. I'd tell him about my day, the students I taught, the flowers that bloomed near the porch. I knew it sounded crazy, but it gave me peace. I'd close my eyes and feel as if he was listening. Then one night, something strange happened. It was late, around midnight, when I woke up suddenly, my heart pounding. I could swear I heard his voice whisper my name, Katie. It was soft, almost like a sigh. I sat up, trembling, and looked around the room. Everything was still. The wind outside brushed against the curtains, and the moonlight spilled across the floor. Maybe it was just my mind, but deep inside, I knew it wasn't imagination. The next morning, I found a white feather on my windowsill. It wasn't there before. It sounds silly, but I took it as a sign, a message from Sam. I kept that feather in my locket, close to my heart. From that day on, I started feeling his presence more often, in small, unexplainable ways. The lights would flicker when I spoke his name. I'd smell his favorite cologne in the hallway, though I hadn't opened the bottle in years. Each time it happened, I whispered, Sam, if that's you, don't stop. I still need you. And somehow, the world didn't feel so lonely anymore. The years kept slipping away like sand through my fingers. My hair turned gray. My hands began to tremble, and the mirror no longer reflected the girl Sam once loved. But inside, I was still her, the same Katie who laughed too loud, dreamed too big, and believed in forever. I retired from teaching when I turned 6. After that, the days grew even quieter. My small house near Lake Serenity became my whole world. Sometimes, I'd sit on the porch and talk to the wind, pretending Sam was listening. I'd tell him how much I missed him, how much life had changed, but deep inside, I knew one thing hadn't changed, my love for him. One evening, as the sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of gold and pink, I found myself holding our old photo album. My fingers traced over the pictures. Our wedding day, our first Christmas, the picnic by the river. In every photograph, Sam's smile seemed to reach out to me, timeless and warm. As I turned the pages, I stopped at one photo, the last picture taken before the accident. We were both sitting by the car, laughing, unaware that fate was only moments away from changing everything. My throat tightened, and tears blurred my vision. Why did you leave me so soon, Sam? I whispered. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt unusually still. Around midnight, I heard it again, a soft knock at the door. It startled me. Who could be visiting at this hour? My heart began to race. The knocking came again, gentle but steady. I hesitated for a moment, then slowly got up, wrapping a shawl around my shoulders. When I opened the door, a rush of cold air brushed past me. No one was there, just the quiet night and the rustling of leaves. I stepped outside and looked around. The street was empty. But then, on the doorstep, I saw something that made my heart stop. A single white feather, the same kind I had found years ago. I picked it up with trembling hands. It glowed softly under the porch light, almost unreal. My eyes filled with tears as I clutched it to my chest. Sam, I whispered, is that you? The wind picked up for a moment, swirling gently around me, and I felt a strange warmth, like invisible arms wrapping around my shoulders. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. It was as if time itself had paused. When the wind calmed, I looked up at the sky. The stars seemed brighter than usual, and one of them, a lone, shining star, flickered like it was winking at me. That night, I knew something deep inside my soul. Sam was still out there, somewhere between heaven and earth, still watching over me. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling, a quiet peace that I hadn't felt in years. The sun was pouring through the curtains, and for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel empty. I made myself a cup of coffee, the same way Sam used to. 2 spoons of sugar and just a splash of cream. I could almost hear him teasing me. "You're drinking dessert, not coffee, Katie." I laughed softly, then caught myself. It had been so long since I'd actually laughed. Maybe I was finally learning to live with the ghosts of my past instead of fighting them. After breakfast, I decided to take a walk to the lake. The air was crisp, and the path was lined with fallen autumn leaves that crunched under my feet. Every step brought back memories. The way Sam used to skip stones across the water. The way he'd pull me close when the wind turned cold. I could almost hear his laughter echoing in the distance. When I reached the lake, I sat down on the old wooden bench where we used to sit together. The surface of the water shimmered in the morning light, calm and endless. I took a deep breath and said softly, "If you're really out there, Sam, give me a sign. Just one more time." I waited for a few moments, half hoping, half doubting. Then, a soft breeze swept across the lake, and a tiny ripple formed right in front of me. A perfect ring of circles spreading outward, just like the ones Sam used to make when he skipped stones. I smiled through my tears. "Thank you," I whispered. That day, I stayed at the lake until sunset. Watching the sun dip behind the trees, I realized that even though Sam was gone, he had never really left me. He lived in the sound of the wind, in the warmth of the sunlight, in every beautiful moment that reminded me of love. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. A few weeks later, something happened that shook me to my core. I was sitting in my living room, reading, when I heard a knock at the door. Not just any knock, it was soft, rhythmic, familiar, the same way Sam used to knock when he came home from work. My hands began to tremble. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. Slowly, I walked toward the door, every step feeling heavier than the last. My mind told me it couldn't be, that it was impossible. But my heart whispered, "What if?" I reached for the doorknob and turned it. My breath caught in my chest. The door creaked open, and what I saw on the other side made my knees almost give way. Standing there, in the fading light of evening, was a man who looked exactly like Sam. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred, and I had to hold onto the doorframe to steady myself. The man standing before me looked so much like Sam. The same deep brown eyes, the same gentle smile, even the tiny scar near his left eyebrow. My heart raced as 1,000 emotions flooded my chest. Shock, disbelief, hope, and fear, all at once. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked softly. His voice, it was so close to Sam's that I felt my knees weaken. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "Sam," I whispered. He looked startled. "I'm sorry." I blinked rapidly, my mind struggling to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe grief had finally taken over completely. I reached out a trembling hand and touched his face. Warm, real. He didn't pull away, but his eyes softened. "My name's Daniel," he said gently. "I think you knew my grandfather, Samuel Carter." The name hit me like a quiet thunderclap. Samuel Carter. My Sam. My lips parted in disbelief. "Your grandfather," I managed to whisper. He nodded slowly, a kind, understanding expression on his face. "I found some old letters in my grandfather's chest a few weeks ago. He wrote about a woman named Katie, the love of his life. When I saw your name and address, I had to come. I just needed to meet you." My eyes filled with tears. I stepped aside, motioning for him to come in. My voice trembled as I said, You look so much like him." He smiled softly. The same shy smile Sam used to have. "That's what my mom says too." As Daniel stepped into my living room, it felt as though time had folded in on itself, like the past had walked right back through my front door. I watched him as he looked around the room, his gaze landing on a framed photo of me and Sam on our wedding day. He walked over and picked it up carefully. "He talked about you," Daniel said quietly. "Even near the end of his life, he told my mom that if there was one person he wished he could see again, it was you." Tears streamed down my cheeks. I sat down, clutching my chest as my heart swelled with both joy and sorrow. He was alive." Daniel nodded. "He survived the crash, but he lost his memory. The doctors said it was severe trauma. He was taken to a different hospital far from here. He didn't remember his name for years. Eventually, he rebuilt his life, married again, had a family, but he always said there was a piece missing inside him." I covered my mouth with my hand as a sob escaped. My Sam had lived, and yet we had spent a lifetime apart. I sat there frozen, Daniel's words echoing in my ears. He survived. Those two words shattered and healed me at the same time. All those years, 50 long years, I had lived believing he was gone. I had mourned him, cried for him, prayed for him, and all along, he had been alive somewhere, lost and broken, just like me. My trembling hands reached for the photograph Daniel was holding. I stared at it, our wedding picture, my smile bright, his eyes full of promise. He was alive all this time, I whispered, and I never knew. Daniel nodded softly, sitting across from me. He didn't remember much for a long time, but after he recovered, small flashes started coming back. A name, a place, a lake. Katie, he wrote about you in his journal. He said he felt like there was someone waiting for him, someone his heart remembered, even if his mind didn't. My tears wouldn't stop. Oh, Sam, I whispered, pressing the photo against my chest. Daniel looked down at his hands, hesitating for a moment. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a small, old box, wooden, carved with tiny flowers on the lid. My breath caught when I saw it. This was his, Daniel said. He wanted it to go to you if we ever found you. My fingers shook as I opened the box. Inside lay an old pocket watch, the one I had gifted Sam on our first anniversary, still engraved with the words, "Forever yours, Katie." The metal was worn, the chain slightly rusted, but when I touched it, it felt like time itself stood still. I could barely speak. He kept this, Daniel nodded, all his life. Even when he couldn't remember where it came from, he refused to let anyone take it. He used to say, "It belongs to someone I once loved more than my own life." I broke down completely then. Years of grief, love, and longing poured out in sobs I couldn't control. Daniel moved closer and gently placed a comforting hand over mine. "There's more," he said softly. "Before he passed away, he made me promise to find you. He said he knew you were still out there. He didn't remember everything, but he felt it, that you never stopped waiting." My voice cracked as I whispered, When did he die?" 10 years ago, Daniel replied quietly. "He lived a long life, but he never truly let go of you." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. My Sam was gone, truly gone this time. Yet knowing he had lived, remembered me, loved me until the end, it brought a strange kind of peace. For the first time in 50 years, I felt like my waiting had meaning. After a long silence, I wiped my tears and looked at Daniel. "You have his eyes," I whispered softly. He smiled, and for a second, it felt like I was looking right at Sam again. The same warmth, the same kindness, the same quiet strength that had once made me fall in love. "I wish I could have met him," Daniel said. "After reading his letters, I feel like I already know both of you. He used to write about the way you laughed, the way your eyes lit up when he surprised you, even the way you used to get nervous before giving a lecture. He never forgot the details." Hearing those words was like having the pieces of my heart slowly placed back together. Sam had lived, and even in another life, another world, his love had never faded. "Would you like to see him?" Daniel asked gently. I froze. "See him?" He nodded. "His grave is not far from here. He's buried in Maplewood Cemetery, just outside the city. I visit him sometimes. I could take you there, if you want." My throat tightened. I wanted to say no, that I wasn't ready, but the truth was, I'd been waiting for this moment my whole life. "Yes," I whispered. "Please, take me." The drive there was quiet. The road passed through stretches of golden fields and whispering trees. I sat in the passenger seat, clutching the pocket watch tightly in my hand, feeling its weight like a heartbeat. Memories flooded my mind. Our wedding day, his laughter, the last moment I saw him before the crash. When we arrived, the sky was gray and heavy, the kind of sky that feels like it's holding its breath. Daniel led me down a narrow path lined with tall oaks until we stopped before a small marble headstone. "Samuel Carter, beloved husband, father, and dreamer. Some loves never fade." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My knees gave way, and I knelt before the stone, placing the pocket watch on the grass. "You found your way home, Sam," I whispered, "and I finally found you." The wind rustled gently through the trees, and a single white feather drifted down from above, landing beside the watch. My breath caught. I looked up, and for a brief moment, I could almost see him standing there, young, smiling, just as I remembered. I reached out, tears streaming, whispering, "I never stopped waiting." And just like that, the wind brushed against my cheek, warm and soft, like a kiss. Daniel stood silently beside me, his eyes glistening. "He waited for you too, Katie, I think. He just needed you to know he never forgot." I smiled faintly through my tears. "He didn't have to remember," I said. "Love remembers for us." The days after visiting Sam's grave felt like stepping into a dream that I never wanted to wake up from. Something inside me had changed. The heaviness that had lived in my heart for decades had finally begun to lift. For the first time in 50 years, I wasn't waiting anymore. I had found my answer. Daniel started visiting me often after that day. Sometimes we'd sit by the porch, sipping tea while watching the sunset. He'd tell me stories about Sam, the way he loved fixing things around the house, how he'd sit by the window every evening staring at the horizon, like he was waiting for someone. He never told us much about his past, Daniel said one evening, his voice soft, but whenever he looked at the sunset, his eyes got wet. I think he was remembering you. Tears welled up in my eyes again, but this time, they weren't tears of pain. They were of gratitude. I'm just glad he had a family who loved him, I said quietly, that he wasn't alone. Daniel smiled. He wasn't. But a part of him was always searching, and now, I think he can finally rest, because I looked out toward the lake as the water shimmered in the fading light. I can feel him here, I whispered. Every time the wind blows, I feel like he's saying my name. Daniel reached into his pocket and handed me a folded piece of paper. I think this belongs to you, he said. I opened it carefully. It was a letter, yellowed with age, the ink slightly faded. My hands trembled as I recognized Sam's handwriting. My dearest Katie, I don't know if I'll ever find you again. My mind is a blur, but my heart remembers your name. Sometimes I wake up hearing your laughter, and for a moment, I feel whole again. I don't know what fate has done to us, but if you're still out there, please know I never stopped loving you. If there's a heaven, I'll wait for you there, by the lake where it all began. Yours, forever. Sam. My tears fell onto the page, blurring the last few words. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. The ache that had lived in me for half a century softened into something gentle, something peaceful. Thank you, I whispered, looking up at Daniel, for bringing him back to me. He smiled. I think he brought me to you. That night, I sat by my window, the moonlight spilling across the room. I placed the pocket watch beside the letter and whispered a prayer of gratitude. For love, for memory, for time, even the kind that separates souls, because now, I knew something I hadn't known before. Love never ends. It just changes form and waits to be found again. Autumn had begun to paint the small town with shades of gold and amber. The leaves fell softly around the old wooden house, where Katie now spent most of her days by the window, the same spot where she used to wait for Sam all those years. But now, there was no waiting, only remembering. Every morning, Daniel came by with a basket of fresh bread or flowers from his garden. You shouldn't be alone, he would say, smiling warmly. Katie would laugh softly. I was alone for 50 years, Daniel. Now, I finally have company memories. Sometimes they would walk to the lake, the same lake where she and Sam had spent their youth dreaming of a future that never came. Katie would sit on the wooden bench, facing the calm water, and close her eyes. Can you hear it? She would whisper. Hear what? Daniel would ask. The sound of time. She'd reply, it doesn't take things away. It just keeps them safe until we're ready to find them again. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Daniel noticed Katie holding something close to her heart, the letter and the pocket watch. You really loved him, he said softly. Katie smiled, her eyes reflecting the warm glow of the dying light. Love like that doesn't happen twice, Daniel. It's like a single heartbeat that echoes forever. Daniel looked at her with quiet admiration. I think he'd be proud of you. You never stopped believing. I couldn't, she replied, because if I did, I would have lost him completely. She looked at the horizon, the same place where the sun and water kissed each evening. But I didn't lose him. I just found him again. In you, in the letter, in every sunset. The wind blew gently, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Katie took a deep breath, feeling peace settle over her like a warm blanket. When my time comes, she said softly, I hope it's by this lake. I want to see the sunset one last time, so I'll know where to find him. Daniel placed his hand gently over hers. I'll make sure you do. That night, as the town grew quiet and the stars took their places in the dark sky, Katie sat by the window once more. She opened Sam's letter, reading it again and again, tracing every curve of his handwriting. The clock on the wall ticked softly, steady, gentle, eternal, and then, she smiled, that same soft smile she used to wear when Sam held her hand all those years ago. Soon, she whispered into the quiet, I'll see you soon. The next morning was unusually quiet. The golden light of dawn spilled through the curtains, painting the room in a gentle hue. Daniel knocked on the door, as he did every day, carrying a bouquet of daisies, Katie's favorite flowers. There was no answer. He called out again, his voice trembling slightly. Katie, it's me. Still nothing. The house felt still. Too still. A soft chill ran through him as he opened the door and stepped inside. The clock was ticking. The kettle was cold, and the old radio in the corner was humming faintly. The same song Katie loved. Daniel walked toward the chair by the window, where she always sat waiting for the sunrise. And there she was. Katie sat there peacefully, her eyes closed, her hands resting over the letter and the pocket watch. A calm smile curved her lips, as though she had fallen asleep in the middle of a beautiful dream. The morning light wrapped around her like a soft embrace, and Daniel knew, without a word, that she was gone. For a long moment, he just stood there, tears filling his eyes. He whispered, "You found him, didn't you, Katie?" He sat beside her, his heart heavy, yet strangely comforted. On the table beside her was a small note, written in her graceful, trembling handwriting. "If love is real, it never ends. It only changes form until we find each other again." Daniel pressed the note against his chest, the weight of her words sinking deep into his soul. He looked outside. The sun was rising, and the lake shimmered in gold, just as Katie had always described it. He arranged for her to be buried beside the lake, under the tall oak tree where she and Sam had once carved their names. The whole town gathered, people who had heard her stories, who had seen the sparkle in her eyes when she spoke of Sam. As they laid her to rest, Daniel placed the letter and pocket watch beside her. "He's waiting for you," he whispered. "And now, you'll never have to wait again." The breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and the sound of rippling water. Somewhere deep in the stillness, Daniel could almost hear two voices laughing, young, free, and full of love. That night, he sat by the lake, watching the stars. The reflection of the moon danced across the water, and for a brief second, he thought he saw two silhouettes walking hand in hand along the shore, Katie and Sam, together at last. He smiled through his tears. "Goodbye, Katie," he whispered. "You finally found your way home." Years passed, and life in the small lakeside town continued to flow gently, like the water that always whispered against the shore. The oak tree where Katie and Sam rested had grown wider, its branches strong and graceful, shading the spot where their names were carved decades ago. Daniel often visited. He had grown older, his hair silver, his steps slower, but his heart still carried the warmth of the woman who taught him the meaning of eternal love. He would sit by the lake every Sunday morning, a cup of coffee in his hand, and speak softly as if Katie were still listening. "I brought your favorite flowers," he would say, setting down a bunch of daisies. "The lake's still as calm as ever, Katie. And the sunsets, they look like the ones you always loved." Children from the nearby town sometimes came to play near the water. They didn't know the story, but they always stopped for a moment near the old oak tree. Curious about the two names etched in the wood, Daniel would smile and tell them, "It's a love story, one that even time couldn't end." Years turned into decades. The town changed. New roads, new faces, new stories, but the legend of Katie and Sam remained. People said that on quiet evenings, when the sun dipped behind the hills, you could still see two shadows walking by the lake, hand in hand. One spring evening, Daniel sat by the water, feeling his heartbeat slow with age. He looked at the sky painted in shades of pink and gold and whispered, "Katie, I think it's time." He closed his eyes and felt the wind brush gently against his face. It carried a familiar scent, daisies and pine, and then he heard it. Soft laughter, distant yet clear, like the sound of youth returning. When the townsfolk found him the next morning, Daniel was sitting peacefully on the same bench, a gentle smile on his face. Beside him lay a single white daisy and a note that read, "She waited, now I'm going to her." They buried him under the same oak tree, next to Katie and Sam, completing the circle of love and life that had begun so many years ago. That night, as the wind rustled through the trees, those who passed by the lake swore they saw three faint lights dancing over the water, like souls reunited, glowing softly beneath the moonlight. And from that day on, whenever someone felt alone, they'd come to the lake, sit under that great oak, and feel the peace that lingered in the air, the peace of a love that never truly died. Because somewhere beyond time and memory, Katie and Sam walked together once more, their laughter echoing across the still water, eternal and free.